All right, so we're diving into Rich Dad, Poor Dad today.
Yeah.
I know you sent this one in
I did.
because it really got you thinking about money and success.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, I feel like this book sparked a ton of debate when it first came out.
It really did, and for good reason.
Yeah,
Robert Kiyosaki throws out some pretty unconventional ideas about money,
yeah.
especially when you look at it through the lens of these two father figures,
Right?
his own dad and his friend's dad,
Two dads.
two totally different perspectives on money.
You've got Robert's biological dad, the one who was highly educated,
Mm-hmm.
but always struggling financially.
Yeah.
And then there's his friend's dad, the rich dad,
Right.
who built his fortune as an entrepreneur.
Yeah, and that contrast really sets the stage for one of the book's most striking ideas.
Okay.
He says the lack of money is the root of all evil, as
Yeah.
opposed to the traditional saying that we've all heard,
Right.
the love of money is the root of all evil.
He kind of flips the script there
He really does.
on what we typically hear.
Yeah.
It definitely makes you question that whole go to school, get a good job, and you'll be set mentality.
Mm-hmm.
Kiyosaki even shares that story about his own son, right? Becoming disillusioned with school,
Yeah.
pointing to people like Michael Jordan or Bill Gates,
Right.
who became incredibly successful
Mm-hmm.
without following that traditional path.
And that's where the idea of the rat race comes in.
Okay.
It's this cycle that so many people get trapped in,
Yeah.
working for money, paying bills, accumulating debt,
Mm-hmm.
and just always feeling like they're one step behind.
So how do we escape this rat race then?
Well, Kiyosaki keeps coming back to this one principle.
Yeah.
He says, rich people acquire assets.
Right.
The poor and the middle class acquire liabilities, but they think they are assets.
I feel like that line has been quoted a million
Right.
times.
It's simple, but it's powerful.
Yeah.
And it all comes down to understanding the difference between an asset and a liability.
Okay.
Something that puts money in your pocket.
Right. An
Yeah.
asset,
Versus something that takes money out.
a liability.
A liability.
It's funny because he uses the example of a house,
Right.
which most people, I think, would
Mhm.
consider to be an asset.
Yeah.
But Kiyosaki argues that if your house is draining your cash flow
Yeah.
every month
Right.
with those mortgage payments and property taxes and all the repairs and things you've got to do to it,
Yeah.
it's actually acting more as a liability.
Exactly. And on the flip side, he talks about building a business,
Yeah.
even a small one,
Okay.
as a way to generate income and create an asset.
So that's where that whole minding your own business thing comes into play.
Yes,
Right?
exactly.
He's not saying everyone needs to quit their jobs
Yeah.
and become an entrepreneur overnight,
Right.
but it's more about building that asset column
Yes.
alongside your job.
He uses a great example with Ray Kroc,
Okay.
the founder of McDonald's.
Yeah.
Everyone thought he was in the hamburger business,
Right.
but his real focus was on real estate. He was buying up the land
Interesting.
under each McDonald's franchise.
I never knew that.
So even if a particular McDonald's wasn't doing well, he still had that land.
Right.
And that land was generating income for him.
That's brilliant.
It perfectly illustrates the idea of building assets that generate cash flow regardless of the ups and downs of a specific business.
Kiyosaki really wants people to think beyond their immediate job
He does.
and consider what assets they could build to create that financial freedom. It definitely makes you kind of stop and think,
Yeah.
like, what skills could I be developing?
Yeah.
What opportunities am I maybe missing
Right.
because I'm so focused on just working for a paycheck?
Absolutely.
And one of the more controversial topics that I remember from this book
Yes.
is,
Power of corporations.
yeah, Kiyosaki gets into that, right?
He argues that corporations can be used by the average person to reduce taxes and protect their assets from lawsuits.
Just like the wealthy have done for
For
centuries.
centuries.
Yeah. It's definitely an area where you'd want to seek professional advice before making any decision.
Well, sure.
But it's interesting how he highlights the importance of understanding the different financial playing fields that exist out there.
He emphasizes that if you want to build wealth, you need to learn the rules of the game.
But even with all the right knowledge and strategies, Kiyosaki is realistic about the fact that building wealth isn't easy.
It's not.
He outlines 5 reasons
Yeah.
why people fail financially.
Right.
Fear, cynicism, laziness, bad habits, and arrogance.
And let's start with fear,
Go ahead.
because I think that's something that we can all relate to.
Yeah.
So many people are just paralyzed by that fear of losing money. So they end up playing it safe and staying stuck instead of taking calculated risks.
He tells that great story about the Alamo
Yeah.
to kind of illustrate how successful people embrace failure.
Right. Even though the Alamo was a devastating defeat, for the Texans.
Yeah.
They turned it into this rallying cry.
Remember the Alamo? Yeah.
And they learned from their mistakes. And they used that experience to fuel their fight for independence.
It's a powerful reminder that those setbacks are just inevitable.
Mm-hmm.
It's not about avoiding failure. It's about how you respond to it.
And that brings us to action.
Okay.
Kiyosaki stresses that you can have all the knowledge in the world,
Yeah.
but if you don't take action, it's meaningless.
He shares that example of Richard,
Yes.
who had the opportunity to buy this great property in Phoenix,
Mm-hmm.
but backed out at the last minute because of fear.
That fear just took over.
He had done his research.
Yeah.
The numbers made sense.
Right. He knew it was a good deal.
But that fear was just too powerful.
Yeah, it's so easy to get caught up in analysis paralysis,
Right.
overthinking every decision until that opportunity passes you by.
So what's the antidote to that?
Well, Kiyosaki emphasizes finding mentors
Okay.
and learning from experts who have already achieved what you're striving for.
He talks about learning to invest in tax liens from this government employee
Yes.
who was doing it successfully.
And it just highlights the importance of being open to learning from anyone who has valuable knowledge to share,
Right.
regardless of their background or their title.
So we've covered a lot of ground so far.
We have.
We talked about the rat race,
Mm-hmm.
assets versus liabilities,
Yeah.
the power of corporations,
Yeah.
and those 5 big obstacles to financial success.
Right.
Fear, cynicism, laziness, bad habits, and arrogance.
Mm-hmm.
But I think what really stands out to me
Yeah.
is this underlying message about financial education.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Rich Dad, Poor Dad is ultimately a call to action
Okay.
to develop your financial intelligence.
I think that's what makes this book so compelling.
Yeah.
It's not just about getting rich. It's about empowering yourself to make those informed decisions about your finances.
And create a life of abundance on your own terms.
Okay. I'm ready to keep diving deeper.
Let's do it.
Where do we go from here?
One of the things that really struck me about Rich Dad, Poor Dad was how Kiyosaki tackles cynicism.
Okay.
He doesn't just dismiss it.
Right.
He sees it as a potential roadblock to financial success.
Okay. So how does cynicism actually hurt us financially?
Well, he talks about how cynics tend to focus on the negative.
Mm-hmm.
They get stuck in what he calls Chicken Little syndrome,
Okay.
always expecting the sky to fall.
So instead of seeing opportunity, they just see risk.
Exactly.
Mm.
He gives that example of his friend
Yeah.
who was convinced that the price of oil was going to skyrocket.
Right.
This friend had all this data to
Right.
back up his prediction,
Okay.
but instead of seeing it as a chance to maybe make a profit,
Yeah.
he just panicked and missed out.
That's interesting because Kiyosaki, in the same situation,
Mm-hmm.
actually used that information to his advantage.
He did.
Didn't he already own shares in an oil company?
Yes.
And then he bought into a smaller up-and-coming one, too.
Yeah, he saw his friend's fear as valuable insight and took a calculated risk.
So it's about turning cynicism into analysis.
It's looking at the same information,
Right.
but seeing the potential
Mm-hmm.
rather than just the doom and gloom.
That's the key difference.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah?
Yeah. Now, I'm curious about what Kiyosaki has to say about laziness.
Okay.
Because to me, that seems pretty straightforward.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you're lazy, you're not going to get ahead financially.
Well, he actually has a really interesting take on laziness.
Okay.
He says that the most common form of laziness is staying busy.
Wait, what? How can being busy be lazy?
It's about being busy with the wrong things.
Mm.
People get so caught up in their jobs, their errands, their daily routines,
Yeah.
that they're avoiding facing their financial reality.
So they're kind of burying their heads in the sand.
Exactly. They distract themselves with TV shopping, even working longer hours,
Wow.
just to avoid confronting the fact that they're not where they want to be financially.
So what's the solution to that?
Well, his solution to this kind of laziness is a little bit of greed.
Greed. I have to admit that sounds a little counterintuitive.
I know.
Isn't greed supposed to be a bad thing?
He's not talking about being ruthless or selfish.
Okay.
He's talking about tapping into that desire for a better life,
Mm-hmm.
for financial freedom,
Okay.
and using that as motivation to take action.
So it's more about harnessing that ambition,
Yeah,
that drive to achieve something more.
exactly. It's about asking yourself, why not me? Why shouldn't I have financial abundance?
Mm.
And that kind of thinking can be incredibly powerful
I like that.
when it comes to breaking free from that cycle of laziness and actually pursuing your goals.
Okay, so how do bad habits fit into all of this?
Well, he uses the example of paying yourself first
Okay.
to show how habits, good or bad, can really make or break you financially.
Yeah, that's a core principle in the book, right?
It is.
The idea that you should set aside money for yourself before you pay any bills or buy anything else.
Pay yourself first.
You know, I've heard that advice before,
Hmm.
but I always struggle with it. It just
Yeah.
feels so counterintuitive when you've got bills piling up.
Especially when you've got bills piling up.
How do you actually make that shift in your own life?
For me, it was about changing my mindset.
Okay.
I started to see that money as an investment in my future, not just something to be spent.
Yeah.
And even if it was just a small amount at first,
Right.
just the act of paying myself first
Yeah.
sent this powerful message to myself that my financial well-being is a priority.
So it's more about the act itself than
Exactly.
the actual amount.
It's about establishing that habit and reinforcing the idea that you deserve to be financially secure.
And as you start to see those results,
Mm-hmm.
it becomes easier to stick with it.
Exactly.
Okay, I can see how that would really start to change things over time.
Yeah.
Now, Kiyosaki also talks about arrogance
Yes.
as a reason why people fail financially.
Mm-hmm.
And that one, to me, seems a bit less obvious.
Okay.
How does arrogance get in the way of financial success?
Well, he believes that arrogance is often a mask for insecurity. People who are arrogant are afraid to admit they don't know something,
Right.
so they close themselves off to learning and growth.
So they're kind of stuck in their own little bubble thinking they have all the answers.
And that can be really deadly in the financial world,
Yeah.
which is constantly changing and evolving.
Right.
He emphasizes the importance of staying humble,
Okay.
being willing to learn from your mistakes,
Yeah.
and always seeking out new knowledge.
So it's about recognizing that you don't have to have it all figured out to be successful.
You don't.
In fact, being open to learning and adapting is probably more important than anything else.
He's always talking about finding mentors, connecting with experts, investing in your financial education.
It's like he's saying never stop learning, because the more you learn, the more you earn.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've tackled those 5 big obstacles.
We have.
Fear, cynicism, laziness, bad habits, and arrogance. What comes next in Kiyosaki's roadmap to financial freedom? Okay, so we've covered a lot with Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
We have.
We talked about the rat race,
Mm-hmm.
the 5 major obstacles that can hold us back.
Yeah.
But now I'm curious, like, what are the practical steps
Yeah.
that Kiyosaki lays out for actually achieving financial freedom?
So he outlines 10 steps to awaken your financial genius.
Okay.
And he's really clear that these aren't like hard and fast rules.
Right.
It's more about finding what works for you
Yeah.
and creating your own unique path to financial freedom.
So let's walk through these steps.
Okay.
The first one is find a reason greater than reality. What does that even mean? It sounds pretty deep.
It is. It's about having a strong why,
Okay.
a driving force behind your financial journey.
Okay.
It can't just be about wanting to be rich for the sake of it.
Right.
There needs to be a deeper reason,
Okay.
something that truly motivates you,
Yeah.
even when things get tough.
He talks about wanting to be free to travel the world,
Mm-hmm.
live a life of purpose,
Yeah,
and have control over his time.
right. And he also mentions his don't wants.
Yeah.
He doesn't want to be stuck in a job he hates,
Right.
burdened by debt,
Yeah.
or missing out on experiences because of financial limitation.
It's about getting clear on what you're moving towards and what you're moving away from.
Exactly. And that clarity can be incredibly powerful.
It's almost like creating a vision board for your financial life,
Yeah, I like that.
a picture of what you want to create
Mm-hmm.
and why it matters so much to you.
And then step 2 is invest in education.
Okay.
And this isn't just about formal education.
Right.
It's about constantly seeking out knowledge,
Right.
expanding your financial literacy, learning from experts.
So it could be reading books like Rich Dad, Poor Dad,
Yeah.
attending seminars,
Mm-hmm.
listening to podcasts like this one,
Right.
or even just having conversations with people who are financially savvy.
Absolutely. It's about recognizing that your mind is your most valuable asset
Yeah.
and investing in it accordingly.
Okay, step 3 is choose friends carefully. And I have to admit, this one makes me a little uncomfortable.
Yeah.
It sounds like he's saying ditch your friends who are struggling financially,
I know.
which doesn't really sit right with me.
I don't think it's about abandoning your friends. It's more about being mindful of who you're surrounding yourself with.
Okay.
Are your friends inspiring you to grow, challenging you to think differently, supporting your goals, or are they kind of dragging you down with negativity and limiting beliefs?
It's like that saying, You're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with.
Exactly. And Kiyosaki's point is that your social circle can have a huge impact
Yeah?
on your mindset and your financial success.
Okay, so what's step 4?
Master a formula and then learn a new one. And this is where things get really interesting.
Okay.
He encourages finding an investment strategy that works for you.
Wow.
Real estate stocks, starting a business, and becoming a master of it.
So it's about focusing on one thing
Yes.
and getting really good at it.
Right. But then once you've achieved a certain level of success,
Okay.
he challenges you to go out and learn a new formula.
Because the world is constantly changing.
Exactly. And the financial landscape is no exception.
Right.
So you need to keep evolving and expanding your skill set.
It's like once you've climbed one mountain, you set your sights on an even bigger one.
I like that.
Okay, step 5 is a familiar one.
Yeah.
Pay yourself first.
It's that important.
We talked about this before, but it seems like a recurring theme in the book.
It's a core principle.
Kiyosaki believes that this one habit can completely change your financial trajectory.
It's about shifting your mindset from paying everyone else first to prioritizing your own financial well-being.
Step 6 is pay your brokers.
Well,
And this one seems a little counterintuitive to me.
Yeah.
I would want to pay my brokers even more money.
he argues that good brokers, real estate agents, stock brokers, insurance agents, they're worth their weight in gold. They can save you so much time and money and headaches in the long run.
So view them as an investment rather than an expense.
Exactly.
Okay.
They can provide valuable information, negotiate deals on your behalf,
Right.
help you avoid costly mistakes. Think of them as partners in your financial success.
Step 7. Be an Indian giver.
Okay.
This one sounds a little cryptic to me.
So he uses this metaphor to illustrate the importance of leveraging assets. He tells the story of how the Indians sold Manhattan to the Dutch for some beads and trinkets.
But they didn't actually give up Manhattan.
No, they kept using the land, just traded some trinkets for some other goods and services.
And his point is that you should approach investing in a similar way.
Exactly.
But
Don't just buy and hold assets. Look for opportunities to leverage those assets to acquire even more assets.
Be creative and find ways to make your money work harder for you.
Absolutely.
Okay, step 8.
Use assets to buy luxuries. And this kind of builds on the previous step. He believes that you should use the income generated by your assets to purchase the things you want,
Okay.
rather than going into debt.
So instead of buying that fancy car with a loan,
Yeah,
you buy it with the cash flow from your rental properties, your investments.
exactly. That way you're not depleting your savings or increasing your liabilities.
Okay.
You're enjoying the fruits of your labor without sacrificing your financial security.
Step 9. The need for heroes. This one seems a little out of left field,
Okay.
but I'm intrigued.
He believes that having heroes and role models and mentors is crucial to achieving success in any area of life, including finance.
He talks about how he idolized these baseball players as a kid,
Yeah.
like Willie Mays and Hank Aaron, and he would study their techniques, learn from their examples, and dream of achieving that level of greatness.
It's about having a vision of what's possible.
Yeah.
And being inspired by those who have already achieved what you're striving for.
It's not just about admiring them from afar. It's about actively learning from their strategies,
Yes.
their mindset.
And finally, step 10.
Okay.
Teach and you shall receive. He's a big believer in giving back,
Okay.
sharing your knowledge with others.
He says that when you teach what you know, you solidify your own understanding and you attract more abundance into your life.
It could be sharing your financial knowledge with friends and family,
Okay.
mentoring someone who's just starting out, or even donating to causes that align with your values.
So create that ripple effect.
Yeah.
The more you give, the more you receive.
Exactly. It's about understanding that true wealth isn't just about money.
Yeah.
It's about creating a life of abundance and purpose.
Wow. These 10 steps are really thought-provoking.
I know, right?
It's like a roadmap for anyone who wants to break free from the rat race and create a life of financial freedom.
He challenges us to question conventional wisdom, to think differently about money, and to embrace the power of financial education.
And I think that's the most important takeaway from Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Yeah.
Financial freedom is attainable
It is.
for anyone who's willing to put in the work, invest in their knowledge, and take action.
So what's one small step that you can take today
Yeah.
to start building your asset column or improving your financial literacy?
It could be reading a book, attending a seminar, or even just having a conversation with a financial advisor.
Right. The key is to take that first step and start moving towards your financial goals.
This has been an incredible deep dive into Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
I agree.
We've uncovered some really powerful insights,
Mm-hmm.
challenged some conventional thinking,
Yes.
and hopefully spark some ideas for you to take control of your financial future.
Until next time, keep diving deep.